First thing I'm doing when building this terrarium is refreshing the background. Doing this, I tape down both sides, making sure to get a good seal along the entire edge. Taping down the curved areas can be difficult, but you can always go back later and clean up anything that you missed. Painting this background is especially easy because it's mainly about fixing everything up instead of applying a fresh one. The only areas that are blank are around the edges, and those will require about 5 to 6 coats of paint in order to coat them fully. To remove the tape, I move slowly and keep it at a sharp angle to prevent peeling. I then go back with a paper towel covered in isopropyl alcohol to clean up any areas that weren't sealed. As for the lighting, I use contact adhesive and painter's tape to mount a USB splitter onto the back. I then add a USB extender using the same manner for an extra light. For the false bottom, I use a medium-sized aquarium gravel as the first layer, flattening it down in the visible areas for a cleaner look. Next, I add a thinner layer of coarse sand. Finally, moving to a thin layer of fine sand to prevent the substrate from falling into the false bottom. Next, I mix the substrate and start adding it into the jar, trying to keep the majority of it in the back. Next, I spread the substrate where I want it, trying not to disturb the false bottom. For the hardscape, I first tried 2 stumps thinking they might look like fallen trees. Those looked too symmetrical, so I added a piece of driftwood in instead. Next, I added more substrate for height and to keep the driftwood in place, and also cleaned off the hardscape when necessary. Next, I even out the substrate, making sure there are no air pockets along the way. Adding in the last bit of substrate to the front will secure the hardscape for the rest of this build. I also chose 2 small pieces of dragonstone as an accent to the main focal point. And now, with the last substrate added to the rear, it's time to start planting. The first plant going in is Hemigraphis raponda green. Always plant the taller plants at the back to try to preserve depth. Next, I add a small cutting of Java Fern Trident into a gap. I then move on to Needleleaf Java Fern, planting it to the left of the Hemigraphis. And in front of that, more Java Fern Trident. For the final background plant, I add a Nubius nana and a Nubius nana golden. I also add a couple of cuttings into the foreground as well. All of these plants will thrive in humidity, so they will be very happy long term in this setup. When I'm almost finished planting, I use water to clean off the remaining bits of hardscape. The next plant going in as a ground cover is Ficus pumila corsifolia, or oak leaf creeping fig. The final plant I added in is sphagnum moss. This will spread as the terrarium matures. Next, I add in the final bit of today's water, though I will be misting it every day for the next week. Next, I plug in the USB lights and bend them so that they can shine in the terrarium. And just like that, you have a beautiful jungle ecosystem that will thrive with minimal maintenance. If you enjoyed this week's video, please do like and subscribe.